My name is Andrew Siegel,
And my name is Marco Sanchez.
and this is our podcast. All right. So, I read a book called Sunrise Over Fallujah by Walter Dean Myers. And so, this book is actually about a young army recruit from Harlem, New York. And he joined the Iraq War. He enlisted himself as a result of 9/11. And this book pretty much just describes his experience.
I like that. The book that I chose is called Kipling's Choice. It's a historical fiction novel set during World War One. The story follows John Kipling, a young boy who is a son of a famous writer, Rudyard Kipling, and he's also in the army. Even though John was poor and had poor eyesight, he struggled to qualify for military service, but he wants to prove himself to join the British Army and help his father. The book explores the themes of family pressure, war, sacrifice, and identity. John faces harsh realities of battle. It also shows how excitement and pride people felt about war changed when they experienced the danger and loss firsthand.
All right, so I just want to outline our first essential question, which is what positions does the author take that directly relate to events and conditions of their time? And would you like to do our second one?
And our second essential question is, how does the story reflect the attitudes and beliefs of the time in which it was written or set?
All right, so for this podcast, our main argument is that both of our authors used their main characters' experiences and their experiences of their respective wars to critique the political and cultural reasons that led to these wars and that led to these young men fighting and dying for their country.
The author of my book, Gert Spilbein, reveals the blind patriotism and nationalism, as well as the romanticizing of war as the main force that led many young men to die in World War One.
All right, so my author Myers uses similar ideas, such as he really likes to outline the patriotism that swept the country following 9/11, as well as U.S. imperialism, because many argue that the Iraq War wasn't just about patriotism, and then it was about the U.S. trying to control other countries.
All right. So, central question one is, what positions does the author take that directly relate to events and conditions of their time?
All right, so my author, he wrote this book in 2008, which was just 5 years into the war. And this was a time when the war was already starting to become controversial. And a lot of people were starting to question the reasoning for it. But what makes his position especially significant personally is the fact that his own son enlisted in the military around that time. And this, Myers was not happy about this because he really doubted this war. And he didn't like this war at all. And he had to watch his son go through that. And I feel like another thing about his time was the fact that he had previously written a novel about the Vietnam War, which he himself was a part of. Although he never saw combat, he was in the war. So he saw all these young men. He worked alongside of them, and that really shaped his opinion on the war.
All right, so Gert Spilbein is a Belgian writer talking about World War One, which heavily affected Belgium. He researched the real John Kipling, and it also focuses on Rudyard Kipling, who supported British imperialism and war through his writing. Spilbein's main idea is that the romantic, patriotic ideas about war helped lead to John Kipling's death. Things like his father's poems, the British propaganda, and pressure on young men to prove themselves pushed 18-year-old John Kipling into the Battle of Loos. Overall, Gert Spilbein is challenging the idea that war is a noble or heroic. Instead, he shows the sad reality behind those beliefs, while still understanding both John and Rudyard Kipling as real people.
All right, so I feel like just to summarize for question one, like it seems like both of our authors are writing like are they're very critical of the wars that they portray. They don't celebrate them, and they're just kind of trying to get the point across that like, why did these soldiers die, and what were they even there for in the first place? All right, so our essential question two, and a question I'd like to ask you about your book is, how do you think your book reflects like the beliefs and the attitudes of the historical moment when your book was written?
Ooh, I really like this question. So, I think in Kipling's choice, like many people during World War One, like I feel like they believed war was honorable, and that dying for your country was something to be proud of. Young men were taught that like fighting for the British Empire was the right thing to do. This influenced John Kipling a lot. The book shows this through John's strong desire to join the army, even though he has like a lot of like problems getting in the way. The novel shows that John felt pressured from like his family, like his dad who also served. And at the time, not joining war was seen as like weak and like you weren't
Yeah.
seen. You were like seen as like kind of like an outcast. I feel like.
That's pretty similar to my book too.
Now I'd like to ask you a question about your book, and it's the same question as like how do these books reflect the benefits and attitudes of the historical moment in which they were written?
All right, so I feel like I already kind of covered this in the first question, but I'll kind of restate it. So in the book, the main character, they call him Birdie. That's his nickname. So he enlisted after 9/11, and like this is almost the whole point of this book. Like Myers is pretty much just trying to capture that patriotism and show how like America kind of united under that, and that was actually a bad thing for some people because they like thought they had to go to war, and they feel like that justified the Iraq war because it was like they're going to fight terrorists, but that really never actually like revealed the true meaning of the war, and a lot of people ended up like wondering why the US was in Iraq in the first place. And then like it's pretty much like yours where you said it was about pride because Birdie lists or like he enlists to prove himself, and I feel like it was kind of the thing around then because it was 9/11, and if you didn't enlist, it was like you don't want to defend your country, and you don't want to stand up for what's right. So yeah, it's very similar to your book. So for this next section, I would actually like to compare our books.
Oh,
And personally, one thing that I think my book, Sunrise Over Fallujah, does very well is that it kind of forces the reader to like be confused along with the main character because like the main character never gets a real answer about like if what he was fighting for was even right. Like his friends die, he just sees people dying, he just sees destruction. And then he comes home and he has all this like trauma and he's a changed man, but he doesn't really see like the point. He never understands what he was actually doing there. And I think that confusion is really getting the main point across for this book because Myers is trying to say that like that's the reality of war. And the original war that was sold to Americans was not, it was based on false reasoning, and that's not actually what the war ended up being. And I'd like to see how your book compares to mine in this context.
in this context, I feel like our books are kind of like a comparison between our books is like Spillbean, instead of having like, you know how your character like he sees other people dying and stuff and he doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
The difference is between my book is like John Kipling, instead of like him watching his friends die, it's more his friends watch him die.
Yeah.
Like he was pressured into doing something that he wasn't really qualified for. Like he was smaller for his age, and he was had like a vision issues and stuff. So he was like seen as this kind of like the runt of the pack kind of.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the pressure of him having to prove something led to him dying.
Well, one thing that I found interesting about your book is that, like, Spillbean tells the readers early on that Kipling is going to die, right?
Yeah, he does. At the very beginning, it's like it cuts to like a scene of his death, and it's like he's running back into the building with this gash in his stomach, and then fortunately he dies, and then it cuts to the very beginning of the story.
Yeah. So like my book is kind of focused on the confusion, and yours is kind of showing like the harsh reality because it tells the reader exactly what's gonna happen. And also another thing that I like to comment on for a comparison, I feel like is that my author Myers kind of shows how the ideas behind the overall war on terror are part of the problem because like unlike Spilbean who focuses on like the bigger picture and how the society and the culture was that you have to go to war, Myers kind of focuses on the like he zooms in on the everyday experiences of the soldiers instead of looking at the whole system, and he shows how it like affects individual people and shows how it like the personal struggles of the soldiers in day-to-day life.
I like that.
So what are your like I just want to hear your overall thoughts on the comparison of the books.
I think together, like, the two books make a stronger point than just reading one. Kipling's Choice shows like a bigger picture of war and the beliefs that people had about it, but like it sounds like your book shows like what war feels like as a person like going through it.
Yeah.
I feel like if you like read both the books, like you can understand war from both sides and get like the best picture of war.
Yeah, I really like that. I feel like these are two really good books to compare because like you said, it's like two pieces of a puzzle. It builds the whole picture. And like even though these wars were so far apart, like almost a century apart, and they're very different, I feel like the ideas and like the experiences that the soldiers went through are very similar. And I feel like just reading both of them kind of brings that together.
All right, now we're going to talk about the historical accuracy of our books. So from like a historian's point of view, Kipling's Choice is based on real people and real events with only small changes for like storytelling and to like draw in the readers. Like John Kipling really did go missing in the Battle of the Luz on September 27th, 1915. His father, Rudyard Kipling, helped him get into the Irish Guards by using his connection with Lord Roberts, even though John had failed medical exams because, like I stated earlier, he has like vision problems.
Yeah.
I forget what the exact vision problem was, but a primary source for this info was like the fact that Rudyard Kipling, his like John Kipling's dad, had like an official like journal in the Irish Guards, like took it like once he passed, and he like expressed his deep guilt about his son's death, and he wrote this quote. It's pretty deep, but I like this quote a lot, and it's like, if any questions why we died, tell them because our fathers lied. And like historians, like they still like are trying to process like the quote because like it can have many meanings, but like I think it clearly reflects like the grief and regret after losing his son, John Kipling, because he like the only reason his son died is because he lied to other people to get him into what he was in, like the war and stuff.
That's pretty crazy. So your book is actually based on like a real person?
Yeah, it's like based on like a real story, but it's like shifted to like so like it's easier for people to read, I would say, because like if they were to like do like the historical like accuracy one, I feel like it'd be kind of boring because it would take a lot longer and wouldn't be as action packed.
Yeah, because yours seems more like directly real with only a small small details changed.
Yeah.
But all right. So as for the historical accuracy on mine, I feel like even though mine is like, I mean, it's a completely fictional story. It's just kind of the stories that are real, like the soldier stories. It is like it's based on what real U.S. soldiers experienced. And so the unit that the main character Birdie is in is called the Civil Affairs Unit. And like this unit actually did exist, and they worked with civilians during the war. And the author Myers is a really good author, and he did a lot of research. And like a lot of Birdie's emotions in the story are like what many reporters and soldiers were also reporting at the time. Because, I mean, like I said, he did a lot of research into that. And so I feel like one useful primary source for my argument or for the historical accuracy is the 2002 congressional authorization that allowed the U.S. to go to war in Iraq in the first place. And this authorization claimed that the war was justified because Iraq supposedly had like nuclear bombs, and those weapons were never found, and so those statements were false pretty much. And like Myers shows this same idea in his book through the main character Birdie, because the main character starts to question like the story that the government is telling them that like these people in Iraq are evil, and it pretty much just reflects the emotions that the character feels in the story, pretty much.
I see. It's like crazy, but going back to like what we said earlier, like both books are based off like real history and real experience, and one is based closely on like a real person's life, and the other one is based on what soldiers like actually went through in the modern war. But like, you gotta take a step back and like, neither book is like 100% factual, and they both include like made up parts, but they both still like try to show the bigger picture of war and like the truth of what really happened during war and like what being in war felt like at that time.
Yeah, I feel like looking at it from that lens, especially both of our books combined, it gives you a really good picture of what it's like to live as a soldier in war. Because like we were saying earlier, yours is more zoomed in and mine is more broad. But I feel like when you connect those, it works out really well. But all right, so to end it off, I want to comment on why these books, or why I feel these books are still relevant today. And I feel like these are still important today, especially recently, and like in the last few months, because it seems like war and like talks of wars are starting to ramp up. And like these wars, which could be considered pointless, I feel like should lead more people to think about like the purpose of war. And like books such as this, like encourage people to consider the experiences of the individual soldiers before they like endorse or support a new war. Like they need to see, I feel like people really need to see like the overall point before willingly sending like their country's citizens to war.
Do you think our books positively or like negatively like give war like the point of view of war? Do you think they like if people read our books, are they gonna want to go to war more, or do you think they're gonna like not want to go to war?
I mean, I feel like it really depends, because in my book, like they do some pretty cool stuff. Like they got night vision and all that.
Yeah.
But I feel like for both of our books, you really need to fully interpret it and realize that they're painting war in a picture that's like, it's mostly just politicians sending young men to die, is the summary I feel like the both of our books portray of war. And when you think about it that way, I feel like it makes people a lot more hesitant to like support politicians or governments that are willing to send people to war with really no reason.